We asked you to tell us what's left you feeling ripped off, and you contacted us in your thousands.
You've told us about the companies you think get it wrong and the customer service that's simply not up to scratch.
When you have to call them, it takes ages and somebody else answers the phone who pretty much doesn't know what you're saying.
The customer is not benefiting, and no, I'm not getting value for money.
You've asked us to track down the scammers who stole your money and investigate the extra charges you say are unfair.
They don't deserve to be in any form of business whatsoever, and they just want shutting down.
And when you've lost out but nobody else is to blame, you've come to us to stop others falling into the same trap.
They took the money out of my account and I don't even know who it was that was scamming me.
So whether it's a blatant rip-off or a genuine mistake,
We're here to find out why you're out of pocket and what you can do about it.
Your stories, your money. This is Ripoff Britain. Hello and welcome to Ripoff Britain, where today we're on the trail of the scammers out to get their hands on your money. And as we do our best to stop them in their tracks, we'll be taking a closer look at some of the scams that you tell us about the most.
they can be hard to spot but easy to fall for and could leave you thousands of pounds worse off. And what makes some of them especially cynical is the way they target people trying to sort out life's necessities, like finding a place to live or a job, so as to trick them out of money they can't afford to lose.
But of course, today's programme isn't just about the people who've already fallen foul of the fraudsters. It's about arming you with everything that you need to know to avoid being caught out in the first place. So by the end of this programme, you should know exactly how to spot these particular scams before handing over a single penny.
Coming up, how ruthless scammers con this woman out of tens of thousands of pounds.
I've learnt to trust nobody about anything, and that's a terrible thing because I always trusted everybody.
And the fake landlords taking cash for properties they don't even own.
I thought to myself, I've got the key, I've handed my money to someone that I can physically see what could go wrong.
Now, so many of the scams we feature on this programme start with a phone call right out of the blue. And whether they're trying to talk you into an offer that you apparently can't refuse, or claiming to be from your bank with worries about your account, the only way they're going to succeed is if they can convince you that their story, however far-fetched, is 100% genuine. Well, I'm afraid the fraudsters we're going to hear about were so good at doing that their elaborate lies allowed them to walk away with tens of thousands of pounds of one woman's money, along with a big chunk of her independence as well.
Hi, Mrs. Brown. My name's Kevin. I'm calling from your bank. There's been some unusual activity on your account.
We've become wise to scammers calling up and pretending to be from our banks, saying anything to convince us that they're actually trying to protect our money.
Please don't worry at all. We can make sure that the rest of your money is safe. We will move it into a new account for you right now.
So last year, we reported how fraudsters may now try a different tack, and when they call, they claim to be from the police.
This guy is saying that he's a serious fraud officer and they were working with the bank.
And that same tactic was at the heart of the scam that's conned 84-year-old Joyce Smith out of her life savings. But this time, the criminals went one further and convinced her that her own banks were in on the con.
I thought I was talking to the police and I believed them. And I've always considered the police trustworthy.
Joyce normally hangs up the occasional cold call that she receives. And indeed, that's just what she did when she had one in May 2016, little knowing that it would instantly be followed by another.
I received a call out of the blue asking me if I had sent for certain things on my computer. I said no and put the phone down. But it then rang and they said they were from the fraud squad.
This caller told Joyce that fraudsters were actually working inside her local branches of Barclays and NatWest and taking money from customers' accounts. And of course, he wanted to keep her money out of the fraudster's hands.
And I asked him where he was speaking from, and he said he belonged to the fraud squad. I didn't want to lose money, and so I believed what he said.
The caller then said that he needed to transfer her to a colleague in perhaps the most famous police station in the country.
He said that he was now going to pass me on to the sergeant Jackson, who was from Scotland Yard.
This so-called Sergeant Jackson told Joyce the police had set up safe accounts in her name, all ready to protect her money, but she'd need to visit her banks to make the transfers.
They gave me these account numbers, and would I go to the bank and put this money into these accounts now? By that time I was getting very worried, and he said, as soon as this is over, we shall put the money back where it was before.
Sergeant Jackson told Joyce to keep all of this secret so the criminals who infiltrated the banks wouldn't find out that they were being watched. So convinced that she was actually helping the police catch the crooks red-handed, the next morning she got ready to go to the banks as she'd been asked to do.
They wanted to know when I left the house, how long I was going to be to get to the bank. Then they could switch the cameras on at the bank and catch the people who were doing all the fiddling. That's what they said.
Calling at her local Barclays branch first, Joyce transferred nearly £26,000 to the account numbers that she'd been given over the phone.
When I went to Barclays, the young boy knew me from putting the money in, and when I took it out, he just brought a form for me to fill in.
Then at NatWest, Joyce transferred another £6,000.
She didn't ask me any questions whatsoever, and it was a very large amount. I thought the people at the bank might be the criminals, and that's why they didn't ask me.
Of course, the fake police on the phone had given her very clear instructions to make sure she didn't jeopardise their investigation.
They said that I mustn't even tell any family because they were going to make her arrest, and if I told, they couldn't make the arrest.
Joyce went home and, reassured that her money was safe, she thought nothing of going on holiday as she'd planned for months. While she was away, both her banks did try to get hold of her to query the huge sums that she'd asked to be transferred. When she didn't answer their calls, the transfers totalling almost £32,000 went through automatically. And the scammers didn't stop there. When Joyce came back from her holiday, the fraudsters were on the phone again, telling her that yet more of her savings were at risk. So the whole scenario repeated itself, and Joyce once again went to her local branch of NatWest, where she transferred a further £58,000. This time, though, with so much money at stake, Joyce started to question whether her money really was safe.
I began to really worry about it, but I still didn't say anything to anybody.
But overnight, Joyce became more concerned, and the next morning she tracked down and called the number for the real Scotland Yard. And it was when she asked to speak to the Sergeant Jackson she'd been dealing with that the truth was finally revealed.
I got through to Scotland Yard and asked them, did they know these people? And they said they'd never heard of them. Well, then I was really getting worried. Very, very worried. But it was too late.
Joyce realised that she'd fallen victim to an intricate scam and had been persuaded to transfer a total of £90,000 straight into the hands of the criminals. Within hours, Scotland Yard sent officers from Northumbria Police to her home to investigate. Joyce's daughter Jane, meanwhile, had several times tried calling her mum the previous day, but failed to get through, not knowing, of course, that the fraudsters had been keeping Joyce on the phone.
I said, why have I not been able to get hold of you? And she said, I've been on the phone. I can't tell you. I said, what do you mean you can't tell me? She said, it's a secret. I said, what sort of secret? I'm your daughter. You have to tell me. She said, well, it's the police. So I went immediately over to her house and there was an officer there. And that's when I found out all this scamming had begun.
Jane was totally horrified to discover how her mother had been conned.
My mother, at that point, was so distraught, and actually still is so distraught, that she could not even tell us what money she had transferred. We took my mother to the two banks, and we went through everything with the police officer there. And that's where we found the full extent.
As the scam was discussed with the banks, it became clear that staff had been concerned by Joyce's unusual behaviour, but not enough to raise the alarm.
When I went with the police to the bank to find out what had happened. The woman, teller, was in tears. And she said to me, I thought there was something strange, but your mother is so sensible with money, I didn't like to ask. And my mother also was uncommonly aggressive with her because she thought she was one of the scammers.
The police have been able to retrieve about £13,000 of Joyce's savings, but that means the fraudsters have pocketed £77,000, and it's money that she'd carefully saved all her life.
It was not money I could afford to lose. If I had to go into a home, there was money there. If I need a new roof, there was money there. And so it was my safeguard.
On top of this awful financial loss, all of this has had a big impact on Joyce's confidence as well.
I'll never feel safe again. It's completely altered my life, completely.
To try and make sure that her mum doesn't fall victim to anything like this again, Jane has even investigated whether she can be made a counter-signatory to some of her mum's bigger spending decisions. But the only way to do that would be if she countersigned every transaction, something she's unwilling to do.
I can't ask my mother to do that. She has to be able to look after herself and have her independence, which she's always had.
Detective Inspector Angela Houghton is the genuine police officer who oversaw the investigation into Joyce's case.
In cases such as this, time really is of the essence. The fraudsters operate extremely quickly, and in many cases, if not all, as soon as the victim has transferred the money, the same day, if not immediately after, the fraudster will withdraw the money. So it's often very difficult for us to recover it.
So to avoid things getting to that stage, the police's advice is simple. As soon as anyone who's called you out of the blue starts asking for your personal details, however important they say they are, just hang up.
A police officer will never, ever contact a member of the public and ask them to transfer money from their bank account to another. We've had reported cases in Northumbria where the fraudsters have contacted the victim and not only purported to be a police officer, but have also purported to be an official from another organisation, such as Trade and Standards.
Because Joyce made the transfers into the fraudulent accounts herself, neither of the banks is obliged to refund the lost money. When we contacted Barclays and NatWest, both expressed their sympathies for what had happened, with Barclays stressing that Joyce was questioned about the transaction. But the staff was satisfied with the response she gave as to where the money was going and why. Barclays added that all their staff are trained to ask more questions regarding suspicious transactions. But it's important that customers stay vigilant to potential threats and understand how to protect themselves. NatWest reiterated that nobody, including the bank, will ever ask customers to move money to keep it safe or otherwise, adding that if you suspect a fraud is taking place, you should report it immediately to the bank and the police. Meanwhile, Joyce is becoming resigned to the loss of her savings, but the effects of this particularly nasty scam will last forever.
I've learnt to trust nobody about anything. And that's a terrible thing, because I always trusted everybody. Now I trust nobody.
Over the last decade or so, thanks to rising property prices, more people than ever before have turned to renting rather than owning their home. Now, that's made the rentals market fast-moving and competitive, but also, I'm sorry to say, very appealing indeed to unscrupulous fraudsters preying on those tenants who are desperate to secure the property that they really want. Now, we've looked into some of these rental scams before, but it does now seem as though there are more of them than ever, and that the people behind them are very good at covering their tracks. It's a simple but audacious scam. A fraudster places an ad to rent a house or a flat that they don't own, perhaps even going as far as to show prospective tenants around. They'll promise it's yours, providing you pay a cash deposit quickly. But when the day comes to move in, it turns out that someone else is already living there. And that so-called owner has disappeared with your money. Rental fraud like this has risen over 33% in England and Wales, and among those targeted are people moving to the UK from abroad who may not be aware of the signs that an ad could be a fake. Originally from Cameroon, Deborah Azange moved to the UK in 2015 to study advanced nursing at Luton University.
It was quite stressful, really stressful. I was really anxious, coming into the UK, place I've never been with before. I didn't even know how to go to the shops to buy things.
Deborah's brother Divine had been living in the UK for 5 years, so he was able to help her settle in and look for a place of her own. And after searching online, they saw an ad for a place that looked ideal.
This particular property was 5 minutes away from her university. 2 people sharing, in one flat, so it's not overcrowded. £300 in that area of town wasn't too bad.
With the flat ticking all the boxes, Divine and Deborah arranged a viewing. But as soon as they got through the front door, it was clear that what they were seeing was not the flat they'd seen online.
It did not look like what the pictures said. The guy explained to us that, this was what was available. He had a couple of properties and, we thought it was quite legit.
The man showing them around said he must have mixed up the photos of this flat with another one that he owned. But in any case, it was this one that he had available. And with other viewings booked for later that day, if Deborah wanted it, she'd have to pay the deposit right away. Divine lent his sister the cash, and the person they thought was the landlord immediately handed Deborah a key, telling her to come back in 2 days' time to sign the contract and move in. It all seemed to be going very smoothly.
I thought to myself, £200, I've got the key, I've handed my money to someone that I can physically see what could go wrong.
Sadly, quite a lot, because when Deborah tried to fix an exact time to sign the contract and move in, the man who'd claimed he was the landlord couldn't be found.
I kept calling and the phone rang and he didn't pick up. My brother told me not to worry about it. And I left it. In the evening, I called again. I sent a voicemail and I thought he's going to reply, but he didn't.
With no answer, Deborah and Divine went to the flat to see if they could find anyone there to help.
I came and I walked to the property. I knocked at the door and I didn't get any response. I tried the key and it didn't work. And then I was like, am I in the wrong place? Tried to call the landlord and tried, but to no avail.
Deborah and Divine never heard from the so-called landlord again. He ignored their further calls, and it was clear that he'd made off with that £200 deposit. Although how he'd got access to the flat in the first place remains unclear. Divine reported what had happened to both the police and Action Fraud, but has had to accept that the money is lost.
I really do feel for my sister, for her first experience in the UK to fall prey to that kind of scam. We cut our losses, we found somewhere else, and we got over it, we moved on.
But rental fraudsters don't just prey on unsuspecting tenants to make their money. They can take advantage of genuine landlords too, as Darian Day discovered last year. Wow, this is a lovely sitting room. Lovely big room, nice big window. Darian owns this London flat and rents it out for short breaks through a property website. But without her knowing anything about it, someone else had been advertising her flat, offering it to rent long-term. Darian only discovered the fraud when she was emailed out of the blue by someone called Shelley, who'd been talking to the fake landlord about renting the flat when she moved to London from Paris.
She got very excited about it and was trying to rent it. But I think over the course of her correspondence with the landlord, she became a little worried.
Shelley had smelt a rat when the man she was dealing with wouldn't let her visit the property before paying a deposit. So she got suspicious?
She got suspicious. And her boss, actually, in Paris, said you can do this thing called a Google image reverse search.
A reverse image search means you can click on a picture you see online and find any other web page that uses the same image. So when Shelley searched for other photos of the flat, she was sent straight to Darian's own webpage.
It became very clear to her that actually this is a holiday let, not a long-term let. So she wrote to me saying she was terribly disappointed, but I guess this is not for let. And I said, no, sorry.
But it alerted you to the fact that someone was trying to scam other people using your flat as a portal for it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Incensed that someone was using photos of her flat to try and trick people out of money, Darian turned detective to try and catch the fake landlord out. She emailed him, posing as a prospective tenant.
So I wrote to him in my husband's name, saying that I'd seen the flat advertised and that I loved it. And I assured him I would be a very good tenant and treat the flat as if it was my own.
Which it is, of course.
Which, of course, it is.
The fake landlord got back to Darian the same day, explaining that the flat was available and setting out the cost of the rent and deposit. Keen to reel him in, Darian responded saying she was keen to secure the flat and move in as soon as possible. But at this point, it became clear that before any kind of meeting in person, the scammer was determined to get his cash up front.
He explained that he was busy working in Inverness, so he couldn't actually show me the flat.
Get all the way down to London.
Exactly, but then he did write and say if I was interested, he would be willing to fly to London. But before he flew to London, he needed to know I wasn't a time waster, so I had to pay him a deposit.
How much was that?
£2,000. And not only did he do that, he actually then sent me bank details.
So you had a link with a bank that was supposed to be taking these, let's be frank about this, ill-gotten gains.
Absolutely. So then I got quite excited because I thought, well, now I have him, because now he's given me a bank in England. I checked the sort code, I checked where the bank was, and indeed it is a bank. It's in Ilford in Essex. And I spoke to them and explained the story to them, and they said, of course, with data protection, there was nothing they could do about it.
So that's when Darian came to us. After hearing her story, we looked into the person claiming to own her flat, who called himself Curtis Oust. And we found the same name on ads for 5 other rental properties in London. So we decided to test one out, just as Darian had. And when Mr. Oust emailed us back, we got a similar story to the one he'd sent her. He said he couldn't show us the flat because he was 9 hours away, although in fact the place where he claimed to be is only about 1 hour's drive from London. And he asked us to send an upfront deposit of £1,000, transferred by Western Union. Of course, we did no such thing, and instead wrote back explaining who we really were. And we've not heard anything from him since. But with fraudsters' tactics getting ever more convincing, not least by copying legitimate rental sites, how can you tell the difference between a genuine ad and one that's a fake? Well, here's a man who's going to make that clear. Alban Servien runs a rental site called EasyRoommate.com. He's got an entire team dedicated to weeding out scam ads, and every month it stops around 2,500 fraudulent ones being posted.
Nothing goes live without a moderation process, and we have some tricks to spot the scammer. And we have 15 people who are just dedicated at looking at 100% of the ads.
There are a number of clues that an advert might be fake. If it's too cheap for the area, for example, or it looks luxurious but comes with a tiny price tag. If it says nothing about your potential flatmates, again, approach with caution. And watch out for bizarre excuses.
I don't live in the country, sorry, there is no viewing possible, so that's an alert.
Now, I think I can tell a real advert from a fake, but Alban's going to put that to the test. He's showing me 4 different ads, all intended for his website. But which one's got through? So we've got one here which is... There's a pretty full description of what it's like. Please tell me about yourself, how long you would like to stay, when you can come for a view. I would think that was a genuine one then, inviting you to look at it.
The second one, pretty central.
Very central.
Near a good street.
They're all a bit random, these photographs, aren't they? Who lives there? One male, 18 years old student. Everyone welcome. That doesn't strike me as being too genuine. All right, next one.
Okay.
Nice area of Islington. Flatmates unknown. Everyone welcome. All bills included. Don't think so.
The last one?
And the last one, £650 per calendar month, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Flatmates unknown again, everyone welcome. I think the first one was genuine. I don't think the second 2 were, but I'm not sure about that one. How'd I do?
Yeah, you've done very well, I think. Yeah, quite. On the second one, it's a genuine one.
Is it?
It is, yes. This one, it's close to the Queen. close to Buckingham Palace.
And it's only £650 a gallon a month.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure it's in Buckingham.
It's not in Buckingham Palace. Scammers targeting someone moving from abroad or who doesn't know the area will often make their ads more tempting by suggesting that a property is near a famous landmark or desirable part of town. And even on the most rigorous sites, a tiny proportion of fake ads will still make it through. So Albin has one golden rule to help you hold on to your money.
You need to be able to view the flat, to visit the flat, and obviously you don't pay a deposit. You don't wire the money before visiting the flat. That's the basic rule.
If you're searching for a new place to rent online, do it with caution. As for Deborah, well, even viewing the flat wasn't enough to stop her from being scammed, but she's determined that it won't happen again.
In the future, I'm going to be very careful. I'll make sure I get documentation. Then I have proof of any transactions I've made with anyone.
Still to come on Ripoff Britain, the scam emails convincing enough to trick any of us into handing over our cash.
To say I felt devastated doesn't really cover it because it's something that I had done.
Every year we open up Ripoff Britain's pop-up shop, a one-stop advice clinic for anyone who wants to drop in.
Feel great, Angela.
Whether they've a specific dilemma they need help with,
I've been having some problems returning my son's watch,
or are just after some tips to make sure they're getting the best deal.
We're really happy the BBC put this service forward to us as well. It's great. I think more people should use it. It's really good.
It's a perfect opportunity to catch up with as many of you as we can, so we can make sure we're investigating the topics that affect you the most.
Promise you'll keep watching.
Oh, I'll keep watching, I definitely will.
When Maya called in to see our technology whiz David McClelland, it was too late to put the situation right. But we hope her story means that no one else gets caught the same way. David, this is Maya, and Maya has got a problem with an online course that she took. Maya was looking for a new job, and an online course to train as a private investigator caught her eye. The company promised guaranteed work at the end of it, so she was keen to find out more.
I thought, oh well, I will inquire, and they send me back a message which says, "Hi Maya, I have sent you an email, your job offer."
The course came with a hefty £500 price tag, but after being told she could pay in instalments, Maya signed up, and she sailed through the modules.
So I passed course, and then they said they will send my ID.
The ID was to register Maya as a private investigator, her passport to the job it now appeared she was qualified to do, but it didn't arrive as promised.
I sent multiple emails to them, I rang, I left multiple voice messages.
But after weeks of chasing, the penny dropped.
I just thought, oh my God. And then I did some internet research, and it just became more and more dodgy.
Maya realised she'd been scammed and quickly called her bank to cancel the payments to the company. But by this point, she was already £300 out of pocket.
I just thought, oh my God, because I'm so trustworthy person, I just trust people.
It's a story David's heard time and time again.
The internet is not a place for trusting people so much anymore because people will take you in, they will try and get your confidence and take money from you.
David has checked out the company himself and it's confirmed his suspicions.
They started business May 2014. Less than 18 months later, they are no longer in business anymore. But in that short period of time, really, they've taken in an awful lot of people. And you've had no work out of this.
No.
You know, that what you were promised when you signed up for this hasn't been delivered.
Maya's reported her case to the police via Action Fraud, but David's not hopeful.
I can't say whether you'll get any of your money back, but hopefully nobody else will lose their money as a result of this.
Yeah, I just think it's important for people to kind of realise how much scam.
Well, this is what this programme is about.
Yeah.
It's about putting the word out.
OK, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. And over our 2 days in Manchester, you told our experts about plenty of other scams to watch out for as well.
Hi, Sylvia. Hello. Hello. You seem to have had a crowd around you most of the day. Isn't that rewarding?
It is, but it's also the reassurance we give people. People sometimes feel stupid that they've been conned. And the point about fraud and scams is that you're not stupid. They know what they're doing, the scammers. So the reassurance when people realise they're not alone, and that is good. And it's lovely to talk to people face to face.
Meanwhile, in our gripe corner, keeping your details safe from scammers.
The thing that annoys me the most is when you get the calls coming through claiming that your computer is running slow.
I hate it how the computers are not protecting us enough. We always get viruses. People can just connect to the bank account. They should protect us a bit more.
You know full well there's probably not a problem with your computer.
You'll find plenty of advice to help you avoid getting scammed online on our website, bbc.co.uk/Ripoff Britain.
You know, it seems like only yesterday that the sort of scam emails that were popping into our inboxes were the ones purporting to be from, for instance, an African prince who had $1 million that he needed to transfer into a British bank account. How many of us got that one? But the fraudsters have come a long way since then, and while over the years we've certainly tried to keep you abreast of their latest techniques and also highlighted the telltale signs to distinguish between a real and a fake message, unfortunately those telltale signs are getting much harder to spot. Well, don't worry, because they may be full of ingenious new ideas, but we're not about to let the scammers win. So get ready for everything that you need to know to make sure that, however convincing their latest tactics might be, it won't be you that's taken in. Now, would you be able to tell which of these emails is real and which is fake? Both look the real deal, but only one is genuine.
Not quite sure on that.
No, I'm not sure at all.
Is that one fake?
But as scam emails become more convincing than ever, you may not instantly be able to tell if something is not right. And if you fall for one that turns out to be fake, it could start a chain of events that ends up costing you a lot of money. As unfortunately was the case for record label manager Sarah Fisher and her husband David.
I have a busy job. I manage lots of budgets, money, hundreds of emails a day. I have to stay on top of things.
The couple were adding a major extension to their North London home and had agreed to pay the builder in instalments.
We knew it was a big building job, so we made arrangements to move out for 8 months, and we had a schedule of works and a finance plan through that with our builders.
The build began in July 2015, and the builder's accountant emailed them an invoice every 4 to 6 weeks, which they promptly paid. But when October's invoice arrived, totalling nearly £27,500, Sarah was tied up at work, so it sat in her inbox for a few days. When she got round to paying it the following weekend, she noticed another email from the firm's accountant, advising her that the company's bank details had changed and asking her to make this latest payment into a new account.
Nothing seemed out of the ordinary about the email at all. The email signatures were exactly correct and in the right place. The conversational tone is very familiar to us. It read and felt exactly like an email we were used to seeing from her.
Sarah transferred £25,000, the most her bank would allow in one day. But a few days later, before she'd had a chance to pay the rest, she was surprised to see that the builder's accountant had emailed again, chasing the full £27,500.
My head was just saying, no, this isn't right, it can't be right.
Sarah immediately rang to explain she'd already paid £25,000 and the balance would be transferred later that day to the company's new account. But when the accountant told her there was no new account, the penny dropped. She'd been scammed into paying the money to someone else.
My mind was going out of control. I thought, I've got to solve this so I can work it out and just get my money back and get on with my life. I just needed to fix it.
The couple first called their bank, then the bank into which the money had been paid, and finally the police. Like her, all were initially baffled, because the email that she'd received with the new bank details did seem genuine, and identical to the accountant's other emails. But finally, one tiny difference was spotted between them. The second email address was missing one S.
And it actually took 24 hours for anyone to even notice that. So for that period of 24 hours, it didn't look like fraud.
It seems that somehow fraudsters had been able to hack into the emails of either Sarah or the building company. And they'd then set up a very similar email address so that Sarah didn't notice that anything was amiss when she received the fatal message with those new bank details. But by the time the truth became clear, the couple's £25,000 had already left the fraudster's account.
To say I felt devastated doesn't really cover it, because it's something that I had done. It wasn't that someone had just come into our bank account and taken money. I'd been party to transferring this cash. I hadn't checked. I hadn't called the building company to make sure they had changed their bank account details.
Unable to get any of their money back, Sarah and David have been left £25,000 out of pocket. And their unfinished extension is a constant reminder of one simple but understandable mistake.
It doesn't take a genius to be able to lay some logos on an email in a particular way. It doesn't take a genius to adopt somebody's conversational tone. Now I see how simple it is to do it. I actually don't think it's that complex a crime. It was actually very, very simple. You know, if someone has access to your communication, they can learn a lot very quickly.
As Sarah discovered, those once blindingly obvious fake emails can these days be almost impossible to distinguish from the real thing, which of course is what the criminals behind them rely on to get the money they're set on stealing from their victims. Indeed, so plausible have they become that even the savviest among us, with years of experience of spotting a scam, may well be fooled. It very nearly happened to our own personal finance expert, Sarah Pennells. You also have been very nearly caught out, haven't you?
I have. I was actually writing an article about financial fraud, and I was talking to a fraud expert. And about 40 minutes before I spoke to him, I had an email from one of the social media networking accounts I have, asking me to reset my password. And again, I almost clicked on it because it looked so genuine. It addressed me personally, and it looked official. And I came really, really close. And at the last minute, I didn't click on it. And when I spoke to this chap a bit later on, he told me he'd sent it.
He'd been trying to catch you out?
Yeah, and he said he was doing no more or no less than a fraudster would do. If I came that close to clicking on an email, which would have asked for my personal details, then frankly, you know, what about other people who are online less and maybe not quite as cynical as me?
Now, in the past, we've always recommended that checking the sender's address is a good way to see if an email has really come from whoever appears to be sending it. But even that's no longer foolproof. Sarah's recently had some suspicious emails that pass that test, like this one, which you really would think came from a well-known bank.
If you sort of hover over the email address so you can check where it's coming from, it's actually got an address that looks like it could be plausible.
It just demonstrates yet again how very cautious we all have to be.
I think that's absolutely right. These emails are so sophisticated, and they can seem to come from companies that you do have a genuine relationship with. They can know stuff about you. They may know your name. They may include your address. But that is not enough. That shouldn't convince you that it's from the company.
In 2015, Action Fraud received 8,000 reports of so-called phishing emails like this every month. Many of them from people who'd fallen for the scam behind the phony message. So while we all know to be on our guard, as digital forensic specialist Keith Cottenden knows, that's not as simple as it used to be.
The traditional phishing email scam was always, back in the day, easy to spot. English was usually appalling. It was full of spelling and grammatical errors, and quite obviously, just by its design, a phishing email, trying to get details, valuable details about the user. But they have become more sophisticated.
Even so, Keith believes the telltale signs that an email shouldn't be trusted are still there. So to find out if people know what to look for, he's showing some real and fake emails to shoppers in Manchester. And we'll see if they can tell which is which.
I think I'd say that was the genuine.
Sorry, you think
that one?
That one's genuine?
I think
I'd go for that one.
You think that one? So we've got a difference of opinion.
Right.
Okay, well, only one of them is genuine, and I can tell you it's that one that's the genuine one. In this type of email, it would never be addressed to so generically like that.
Well, out of the two, I think that's more genuine than that one.
Okay, and can I ask why you think that?
Well, only because confirm your account information within 1 hour. That tends to put me off, that somebody will want the information within 1 hour.
Yeah, absolutely, spot on. Can I ask you why you've chose that one?
This just sounds quite informal, whereas the other ones, it just sounds more professional, I suppose.
Yes, that is the fake email message, and they're absolutely correct reasons.
The shoppers that Keith spoke to clearly had their eye on the ball, as 10 out of 12 got it right.
You're quite correct, this is a fake email.
But they had been told that some of these were not genuine, so they were already on the lookout for signs, which Keith says just is not the way that most of us will typically approach our emails. So the best way to avoid being caught out is to check any request for money, especially to an account that you haven't used before.
Query anything that is asking for payment by email. Email is not secure, yeah? And even if you use a secure email, it doesn't mean that the supplier is using a secure email. So conduct financial transactions by other means.
Of course, Sarah wishes that she'd made a call to check the message that she received. But with her money gone for good, she'll never take any email she receives at face value again.
The bottom line of it is that £25,000 is gone. It makes me very angry.
If you've got a story you'd like us to investigate, then you can get in touch with us via our Facebook page, BBC Ripoff Britain. Our website, that's bbc.co.uk/Ripoff Britain. Or if you'd like to send us an email, our address is ripoffbritain@bbc.co.uk. And of course, you can send a letter to our postal address, Ripoff Britain, BBC Key House, Media City, UK, Salford, M50 2QH.
You know, very often in this series, someone who features in one of our films will at least get some of the money back or have their situation resolved. But one of the reasons why we all hate these scams so much is that most of the time the people caught out by them will never ever see a penny of their cash ever again.
Which makes it all the more important that the rest of us keep our guard up and learn from what happened in such situations so that we don't come a cropper in the same way. And it's why we're so grateful to all the people who are prepared to share their experiences with us.
Absolutely, because we may not be able to get their money back from the scammers, but what we can do is make sure that some good comes out of their stories so that you can be sure that we will always be keeping an eye on the very latest scams and telling you about them as soon as we possibly can. For now, though, I'm afraid we've just run out of time. But as always, thanks for joining us. And until the next time, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.